You know, usually when we think about the origin of something, um, like a company or a country or even the universe itself,
Yeah.
there's this expectation of just, well, supreme
Oh,
reverence.
absolutely. The creator always gets the spotlight.
Right. The founder, the architect, they always get the biggest statue in the town square. It just makes intuitive sense, you know? Without step one, you simply do not get step two.
Yeah, the logic is pretty straightforward there.
But then you step into the world of Hindu theology, and suddenly that logic just completely flips.
It really does. It's fascinating.
It is, because the grand architect is like sitting quietly in the back room, while the managers who maintain the building and the demolition crew are getting all the praise, all the
You want
attention.
the actual devotion, yeah.
Exactly. And that paradox is exactly what we are dissecting today in a brilliant paper. It's titled Why Brahma Came to Be Less Worshipped, a symbolic and sociological interpretation by Siva Tirukupali Garu.
It's a great piece of work.
It really is. So, for you listening right now, we're going on a deep dive into this fascinating quirk of one of the world's oldest religions. We're exploring why Brahma, the creator of the universe in Hindu tradition, is so rarely worshipped directly compared to Vishnu and Shiva.
Because the contrast is just massive.
Massive. Across the vast geography of India, there are shockingly few temples dedicated exclusively to Brahma. I mean, the most famous one is literally just known as the Brahma Temple because it is that much of an anomaly.
Right, which is wild to think about.
But this isn't just a theology lesson. This is actually a fascinating mirror into human psychology. It asks a core question about how you and I operate. Like, why do we emotionally engage so much more with the things that maintain or destroy our world rather than the things that created it?
It really gets to the heart of what humans actually value in their day-to-day existence versus what they just, respect on paper.
Hmm.
Because when you look at the sheer volume of temples, festivals, and literature dedicated to Vishnu and Shiva, the absence of Brahma stands out as one of the most glaring sociological puzzles in religious history.
It really does.
It forces us to ask what purpose worship actually serves for the average person. Is it about honoring a historical timeline, or is it about surviving the present moment?
Well, here's where it gets really interesting. Because to explain this ancient, deeply profound religious dynamic, Garu's paper uses a surprisingly modern, incredibly everyday object to make the psychology click.
Yeah, I love this part.
The paper frames the Hindu Trimurti, the three main deities, right through the life cycle of a car.
It is a brilliant framing mechanism.
Yes.
It takes something incredibly abstract and cosmic and grounds it in a lived experience almost everyone has had.
Exactly.
According to the papal's framework, Brahma represents the car manufacturer.
Right.
He is the vast, distant factory where the vehicle was originally assembled.
Which, I mean, the manufacturer is undeniably vital. Obviously, without the factory, there is no car.
Right, no one disputes the necessity of the assembly line.
But if I think about my own relationship with the company that built my car, it is entirely transactional and strictly in the past tense.
You're not calling them up every day.
No, I don't interact with the factory. Once I buy the vehicle and drive it off the lot, my relationship with the manufacturer is essentially over.
And the paper actually emphasizes this point beautifully. Garu notes that acknowledging the creator is a matter of intellectual gratitude, not existential desperation.
Intellectual gratitude. I like that.
Right, like, the factory exists, but your focus shifts entirely to the present reality of driving. In Hindu cosmology, Brahma represents that primordial creation, the cosmic beginning.
Yeah.
It is an intellectual acknowledgement of a process that is already completed. The universe has been manifested. The car is already on the road.
It's like the founder of a tech company versus your local IT support.
Oh, that's a good way to put it.
You respect the founder, you know they invented the software, but you don't call the billionaire founder when your laptop crashes right before a major presentation and you're locked out of your email.
No, you definitely don't.
You call IT because IT solves the immediate pain. But does this mean creation itself is viewed as less important in this tradition, or is it just less emotionally urgent for the average person walking around trying to live their life?
What's fascinating here is that it is entirely about emotional urgency. It is absolutely not a lack of respect for creation.
Okay.
In the philosophical texts, creation is paramount. But humans are practical, emotional creatures navigating a very difficult physical reality. We don't feel a strong emotional need to engage in daily, desperate worship of a distant origin.
Because the origin is settled.
Exactly, it's done. Human anxiety is rooted in the now and in the unknown of the future. We need help with what happens after the car leaves the factory.
Right, because acknowledging the factory doesn't help you when the engine starts smoking on the highway.
It really doesn't.
That immediate visceral panic requires a different kind of intervention. So if Brahma is the distant factory, who are we actually dealing with day to day? We have to maintain the car, navigate the traffic, and eventually, no matter how well we drive, the car is going to break down for good.
Inevitably.
Moving from the origin of the vehicle to its ongoing lifespan and eventual demise perfectly maps onto the overwhelming popularity of the other two members of the Trimurti, which are Vishnu and Shiva.
Let's look at Vishnu's role in this ecosystem first.
Mm-hmm.
In the car analogy, Vishnu is the dealer, the mechanic, the service provider.
The guy you actually call.
Right. He represents preservation, protection, and crisis intervention. When humanity is suffering, when the societal engine is smoking, Vishnu is the one who actively intervenes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, the texts describe him appearing as avatars. These are incarnations like Rama, Krishna, and Narasimha, specifically to rescue humanity, defeat disruptive forces, and restore moral order, or dharma.
So he is the cosmic AAA.
Basically, yeah.
You get a flat tire on the highway of life, Vishnu is the one pulling up with a tow truck, and people naturally flock to those forces, right? We gravitate towards safety, stability, morality, prosperity.
Absolutely.
Because maintenance affects your everyday life. If your car breaks down, you can't get to work, you can't feed your family. It's an immediate, terrifying crisis.
And that constant need for maintenance, for protection against the daily wear and tear of existence, is what bred the profound tradition of bhakti.
Bhakti being a deep, emotional, devotional worship.
Yes, exactly. You form a powerful personal bond with the mechanic who keeps your car running and keeps your family safe. You rely on them intimately. The paper suggests that human devotion flows naturally toward the preserver because preservation is an ongoing, active struggle.
But then eventually, no matter how skilled the mechanic is, no matter how carefully you drive, the car reaches the end of the line.
It always does.
The engine seizes up, the frame rusts out, it's over. And that brings us to the third part of the cycle, and to Shiva. The paper casts Shiva as the junkyard owner.
Which is a striking, albeit highly unusual image for a divine being.
Okay, let's unpack this for a second. Because calling a revered ancient deity like Shiva a junkyard owner sounds almost humorous to a modern ear.
It does.
Honestly, it sounds a bit irreverent. Like, if I'm worshiping the divine, I don't usually picture a guy crushing sedans into cubes of scrap metal. How does this actually translate to profound spiritual reverence? Because Shiva commands massive devotion across the world.
Well, it sounds abrasive at first glance, I agree. But we have to look at what a junkyard actually represents in the grand scheme of material existence.
Okay.
It is not merely a place of chaotic destruction, it is a place of transition. The junkyard is the ultimate recycler. The old, broken material is broken down systematically so it can become raw material for something completely new. In Hindu philosophy, Shiva governs dissolution and transformation. He destroys the ego, he dissolves ignorance.
Wow.
Yeah, he brings an end to cycles that have run their course.
So it's recycling, taking something that has exhausted its usefulness and preparing it to be liberated from its current form.
And that ending is what leads to moksha, which is liberation. If we look at human psychology, our deepest, most intense fears revolve around finality. We fear death. We fear profound loss.
Right, the really heavy stuff.
Exactly. We fear the relentless march of time, and we fear irreversible change. Therefore, a deity who governs these terrifying existential realities and doesn't just govern them, but transforms them into ultimate spiritual liberation becomes deeply, deeply revered.
That makes so much sense.
The junkyard is the necessary, inevitable transformation we all must eventually face. Devotion to Shiva is in many ways making peace with the ultimate unknown.
So we respect the factory, we rely on the mechanic for our daily survival, and we are in absolute awe of the recycler because he represents the great, terrifying unknown of the end. The car analogy really does perfectly explain the psychology for us today. It makes the abstract incredibly tangible. But here is what I'm wondering. How did ancient people articulate this psychological shift centuries before cars or factories even existed?
That's a great question.
Because the sociology is clear to us now, looking backward, but they must have had their own internal logic, right? Their own narratives to justify why Brahma, the creator, wasn't getting the big temples.
They did, and they didn't use sociology or modern metaphors, obviously. They used mythology. The traditional Puranic narratives offer some incredibly dramatic, vivid stories to explain Brahma's reduced worship.
I bet.
It wasn't framed in these texts as a natural psychological shift toward the preserver or the destroyer. It was framed as a direct cosmic consequence,
Hmm.
a punishment.
Divine drama to explain human behavior.
Exactly. The most famous example is the Lingad Pava myth, which centers on a massive cosmos-shaking conflict between Brahma and Shiva.
Okay, tell me about this.
Well, the texts describe an argument between the two over who was the ultimate supreme being. And to settle this clash of egos, Shiva suddenly manifests as an infinite blazing pillar of light.
Just out of nowhere.
Yeah, just this pillar that tears through the fabric of the universe, stretching endlessly up into the heavens and endlessly down into the cosmic depths. And Shiva challenges Brahma and Vishnu to find the ends of this pillar.
So, if I remember right, Vishnu turns into a boar, representing immense strength and determination, and digs down into the bedrock of the universe.
Right.
And Brahma turns into a swan, representing elegance and flight, and flies upward into the sky.
That's the story. And after traveling for what feels like eternity, traversing millions of miles, neither can find the end of the light. The infinite cannot be measured.
Obviously.
So Vishnu returns to the starting point and humbly, honestly admits he couldn't find the bottom. He surrenders to the sheer scale of the divine.
But Brahma doesn't do that, does he?
No, Brahma, flying upward, makes a fatal error in judgment. He decides to lie. He comes back and claims he's successfully reached the very top of the infinite pillar.
He literally fakes the data to win the argument.
He does. But Shiva, being all-knowing, immediately catches him in the falsehood. And as punishment for his arrogance and his willingness to lie for supremacy, Shiva curses Brahma, declaring that he will never receive widespread direct worship on earth.
Wow. So, on one level, it's a moral lesson. It heavily emphasizes humility and truthfulness, punishing ego.
Yes.
But on another level, it so conveniently explains a real-world sociological quirk. It gives a narrative reason for the empty temple.
It really does perfectly map onto reality.
And it's not the only curse, right? The paper mentions that in other traditions, his own consort, Saraswati, curses him.
Yeah, after a dispute over a ritual where he took another wife to complete a ceremony when she was late.
Right. But this raises a huge question for me. Are these stories meant to be literal, factual history to the believers, or are they deliberately encoding the social and sectarian rivalries of the time? Like, is this just ancient public relations?
This raises an important question about how religious texts function historically. The paper dives deep into the sociological mechanism here. These Puranic myths didn't just fall out of the sky.
Right, they evolved.
Exactly. They evolved over centuries, roughly between 300 and 1000 CE, right alongside shifting societal structures. Ancient India was transitioning.
How so?
Well, the older elite Vedic religion was heavily focused on elaborate fire rituals, yajnas, which were deeply tied to Brahma. But as society grew more complex, agrarian, and localized, people needed accessible deities they could worship in local temples, not just through elite priests.
So large, distinct communities began to form organically around Vishnu the Vaishnavas and Shiva the Shaivas.
Right.
And as these groups grew massive, backed by local kings and sweeping cultural movements, they needed theological justification for why their specific deity was the supreme boss of the universe.
And the texts reflected this shifting theological landscape. The myths were explaining a sociological reality, the decline of elite ritualism, and the explosive rise of emotional, temple-based devotion to Vishnu and Shiva through the lens of divine drama.
So it provided a narrative framework.
Yeah, a theological mandate for what was already happening on the ground. If your community is elevating Shiva, the easiest way to cement his supremacy is to tell a story where he literally curses the creator of the universe to submission.
Okay, so we've got the psychological reason, the car metaphor of emotional urgency. We've got the narrative reason, the mythological curses acting as sectarian PR.
Right.
But Garu's paper points out that there is something even deeper beneath all of this. The myths actually encode a profound shift in how Hindu philosophy itself was evolving. We have to move from the stories people were telling to the actual philosophical bedrock that drove this permanent change in worship.
This is where the theology gets incredibly sophisticated. Over time, many dominant Hindu philosophical schools began to heavily prioritize the concept of liberation, escaping the cycle of rebirth entirely over any attachment to material creation.
Escaping the cycle. Because if you really think about it, why would you passionately worship the guy who built the trap you're trying to escape?
A blunt but philosophically accurate way to put it, honestly.
Right.
Brahma governs samsara, which is the manifested material universe. It is the realm of illusion, the cycle of life, death, disease, suffering, and rebirth.
All the hard stuff.
Yeah. But in these traditions, the ultimate spiritual goal is not to stay comfortably inside samsara. The goal is transcendence. The goal is to get out.
So what does this all mean? It means the spiritual focus naturally shifted heavily from who created this painful world to who protects us while we are stuck in it and ultimately who liberates us from it entirely.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Vishnu and Shiva became inextricably linked to that transcendence. And this ties into a massive conceptual difference between Hinduism and many Western religions, which Garu highlights. We have to talk about cyclical cosmology.
Oh, this is fascinating because in religions with a linear timeline, like Christianity or Islam, creation is the absolute singular starting gun.
Right.
Boom, let there be light, and the timeline moves permanently forward from point A to an eventual point B at the end of days. The creator is everything because the creation only happens once. But Hindu cosmology doesn't work like that at all.
No, it features endless, staggering cycles of time. Yugas and kalpas, creation, preservation, and dissolution repeating on a cosmic loop forever.
Just over and over.
Yeah. A single day of Brahma lasts billions of human years, and then the universe dissolves, rests, and is born again. In a framework of endless repetition, Brahma is not the absolute singular beginning of everything that ever was. He is simply a cosmic function within a recurring loop.
So he's just a gear in the machine, a very important, incredibly massive gear, but still just one part of an eternal grinding rotation. The universe wasn't created once, it's created an infinite number of times.
And understanding that cyclical nature lessens the theological emphasis on a singular creator figure, just one phase of an infinite process. To worship creation in a cyclical universe is to worship the turning of the wheel, rather than the escape from it.
Wow. And this philosophical shift didn't just stay in the heads of theologians reading Sanskrit, it completely changed history.
It really did.
The paper details how this exact philosophy led to massive, sweeping devotional movements, the Bhakti movements. Starting around the 6th to 9th centuries in southern India, you had these explosive, passionate movements forming. The Alvars devoted to Vishnu, the Nayanars devoted to Shiva.
Yeah, and they weren't just doing quiet rituals.
Right. They were writing visceral, emotional poetry in local languages, singing in the streets, and building rich, massive temple systems that still stand today.
It was a complete cultural mobilization. It democratized religion, pulling it away from the elite and giving it to the masses through emotion, song, and direct personal devotion to the preserver and the destroyer.
And Brahma never got one.
No, he didn't.
Brahma never developed an independent bhakti movement on that scale. Nobody was writing ecstatic street poetry about the distant factory.
They really weren't.
When we synthesize the history, the sectarian mythology, and the profound philosophy of liberation, it points to a very stark reality. Emotional accessibility dictates history.
Yes.
People worship what gives them healing, what brings fertility, wealth, justice, forgiveness, and salvation. Creation is philosophically vital. Without the foundation, we aren't here. But emotionally, it remains distant.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it becomes abundantly clear that this is not about disrespecting Brahma. The lack of temples is not an insult. It reflects a universal human tendency. We focus our devotion, our limited energy, and our resources on the aspects of divinity or even the aspects of secular life that intersect directly with our daily suffering and our daily experiences.
The burning crises of the present and the existential fears of the future. We engage with what helps us survive today and what promises to save us tomorrow.
Exactly.
We've covered so much ground here. To trace the arc of Garu's paper, we started with the modern psychology of the car dealership. Brahma is the manufacturer, the distant origin we acknowledge but don't call in an emergency.
Right.
Vishnu is the mechanic, providing daily continuity, protection, and crisis management. And Shiva is the recycler, the junkyard owner, representing the terrifying but absolutely necessary transformation of the end.
And we saw how that exact psychological reality was encoded into ancient myths, like the infinite pillar of light and Shiva cursing Brahma for his ego, and how it was ultimately driven by a deep philosophical bedrock that prioritizes liberation from the material world over mere existence within it.
Brahma's lack of direct worship is a profound reflection of human nature itself. And for you listening, I think this framework completely changes how we view the things we revere in our own lives. It makes you stop and notice what you prioritize emotionally. Are you focusing your energy on the origins, the maintenance, or the transformation?
It's a great lens to look through.
It really is. And I want to leave you with one final lingering question to ponder as we wrap up this deep dive. If human nature is fundamentally hardwired to emotionally invest in the mechanics who maintain our world and the recyclers who transform it, do we collectively take our creators for granted?
Oh, that's a tough one.
Right. Think about the origins of our institutions, the founders of our communities, the people who started our relationships, or even the origins of our own lives. Do we take them for granted simply because they've already finished their job? It's something to think about the next time you turn the key in the ignition. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. We'll see you next time.